My parents always said I had an overactive imagination, a flair for the dramatic. It was their gentle way of calling me a drama queen. When my 6-year-old daughter, Lily, mentioned the uncle in the basement, they brushed it off. They said it was a childish fantasy, a ghost story spun from a messy divorce and a new, old house. They told me I was overreacting, that I was projecting my anxieties onto my child. But I saw the look in my daughter's eyes. It was a deeply rooted, primal fear that I, as her mother, couldn't ignore. It was ancient and cold, and it had no place in the bright, innocent world of a little girl. So I did the one thing they told me not to do, the one thing they forbade me from doing in their own house. I checked the basement camera. In the grainy footage from that dark place, I found a buried secret. This truth was so shocking that it shattered my world and changed all my memories of my family. Moving back in with my parents at 32 wasn't exactly my proudest moment. It felt like a huge step backward on a path I had carefully worked to forge for myself. After the divorce, my finances were a mess, and my spirit was low. Their large colonial home in our quiet town felt less like a retreat and more like a sanctuary. Lily and I were supposed to heal in that place. My parents, John and Mary, were products of their generation. They valued a stiff upper lip and practical solutions. They did not believe in airing dirty laundry. My divorce was a source of quiet shame for them, a problem to be managed, not a wound to be tended. They loved Lily, so they accepted me with a reserved, dutiful affection. "It's until you get back on your feet, Sarah," my father would say, patting my arm a little too hard. "We'll get you sorted." The house was exactly as I remembered it from childhood. The floral wallpaper in the upstairs hallway looks the same. The grandfather clock in the foyer chimes every hour with a wheezing, off-key groan. It was a museum of my youth, but one part of the house felt different. No amount of my brightest childhood memories could brighten it: the basement. It was a vast, unfinished space with a concrete floor that was cold and damp even in the summer. The stone walls seemed to weep condensation. A bare bulb hung from a rafter. It cast long, dancing shadows. These shadows turned old furniture into monstrous shapes. As a kid, I'd hated it. I'd make up any excuse not to be the one sent down for a jar of preserves. My parents always laughed it off. "Such a scaredy cat, Sarah," my mother would say with a sigh. "It's a basement." Now, as an adult, that childhood fear has been replaced by a vague unease. The basement door was a heavy oak thing at the end of the kitchen hallway. It was always kept locked. My father was meticulous about it. "Don't want Lily wandering down there and hurting herself," he'd explained. It made sense. It was practical. But the finality in the way that deadbolt slid home felt like more than just a safety precaution. It felt like a seal. For the first few weeks, things were fine, as fine as they could be. Lily, resilient as kids are, seemed to be adjusting. I was slowly piecing my life back together. We were building a new normal, a quiet life within the sturdy, familiar walls of my childhood home. We felt safe. It's almost funny, looking back, how profoundly I believed that. How deeply I trusted the foundation of that house and the people in it. Safety, I've learned, is the most fragile illusion of all. It started subtly, the way most horrors do. Not with a scream, but a whisper. Lily had trouble sleeping at night. The pediatrician said this was common after a divorce. I was used to her little feet pattering down the hall to my room around 2 in the morning. But one night, she didn't come to me. I woke up to a different sound, a tiny murmuring voice from her room across the hall. I crept to her doorway. She sat upright in bed. Her strawberry shortcake nightlight cast a soft pink glow around the room. She was staring, unblinking, at the floorboards, and she was whispering. "No, Uncle," she said, her voice small but firm. "It's sleepy time, you have to be quiet now." I froze. Uncle. My brother, her only uncle, lives 3 states away. We hadn't seen him in over a year. "Lily, honey," I whispered, stepping into the room. She jumped, her eyes wide as she looked at me, like I'd broken a trance. The fear that flashed across her face wasn't for me, but it was there, sharp and real. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" I asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. She shook her head and buried her face in my side. "Nobody, Mommy." The next morning, I brought it up over coffee, trying to sound casual. "Lily was talking in her sleep last night," I said. "Something about an uncle." My mother didn't look up from her crossword. "Probably just a dream, dear. Kids say the strangest things." My father grunted from behind his newspaper. She's in a new place. Her imagination is working overtime. Don't coddle her, Sarah. It'll only make it worse. Don't coddle her. It was their mantra for everything. I tried to believe them. For a few days, I pushed it to the back of my mind. It was a dream. She was adjusting. I was tired and stressed, and yeah, maybe a little paranoid. But then it happened again. This time, I saw her at the top of the main staircase. She was looking down the kitchen hallway toward the locked basement door. It was the middle of the day. "He's loud," she whispered as I got closer, not taking her eyes off the hallway. "Who's loud, honey?" I asked, my blood turning to ice. "Uncle," she said, her voice barely audible. "He's making noise." I listened. I held my breath, but I heard nothing. The hum of the fridge, the tick-tock of the clock. "I don't hear anything, Lily," I said gently. She finally looked at me. Her face showed pure frustration, like trying to explain the obvious to someone who doesn't get it. "He's on the floor, Mommy. He's always there." That evening, I tried to talk to my parents again, and this time I couldn't keep the tremor out of my voice. "She's still talking about this uncle," I said. "She says he's in the basement." My mother set down her knitting, her face a mask of weary patience. "Sarah, honestly, you have to stop. You're scaring her and you're scaring yourself. There is no one in the basement. It's locked. It's been locked for 30 years. "Maybe we should show her," I pleaded. "Unlock the door, show her there's nothing down there." "Not," my father's voice boomed, startling me. He lowered his newspaper and his eyes were hard. It was a look I didn't see often, but one I knew meant the conversation was over. "We are not indulging this fantasy. She'll forget all about it if you stop making such a fuss. You're overreacting." Overreacting. The word hung in the air, a familiar accusation. I was overreacting about my college choice, about my doubts about my ex-husband. It was their go-to defense, the wall they put up against anything that made them uncomfortable. But this wasn't about my life choices. This was about my daughter. The fear in her eyes was real. My instincts, the ones my parents said to ignore, screamed that something was wrong in this house. The whispers were getting louder, and I was the only one listening. It's a terrifying feeling, isn't it? Being the only one who sees the danger while everyone else tells you you're crazy. If you've ever felt that pit in your stomach, that sense of dread, then stick with me. Don't miss what happened next. Trusting my gut was both the most important and most terrifying choice I ever made. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. It was a quiet, domestic war. My parents acted like I was a patient recovering from madness. Their cheerfulness felt forced and condescending. They asked Lily about school, her friends, and other topics. They avoided mentioning the uncle. They wanted to create a new reality for her, one where her fears didn't exist. But reality has a way of pushing back. Lily stopped talking about the uncle, at least to them. She internalized it. The fear went inward, coming out in other, more disturbing ways. She started drawing. Page after page of black crayon scribbles. In the center of the chaotic lines, there was always the same figure, a tall, thin man with no face, a dark oval. When I asked who it was, she'd shake her head and fold the paper in half. The nights were the worst. She wouldn't sleep in her room. She only wanted my bed. Her small body curled up like a tight ball, gripping my arm. I often woke up with little nail marks on my skin. A few times, I woke up to find her standing by my bedroom door, staring out into the dark hallway, staring toward the basement. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. My parents' gaslighting was brutally effective. In the daylight, their logic seemed almost plausible. Was it so crazy to think I was projecting? I'd stand in the kitchen, staring at the basement door and feel a wave of embarrassment. It was a door. But then night would fall and the house would transform. Every creak of the floorboards became a potential signal. I started hearing things, or maybe imagining them. A soft thud from below, a scraping sound. I'd mention it to my father. "That's the house settling, Sarah," he'd say, not even looking at me. "It's been making those noises for 50 years. One afternoon, I spotted Lily's favorite stuffed bear, Barnaby, on the floor by the basement door. I knew for a fact she had left it upstairs. "Lily, did you bring Barnaby downstairs?" I asked her. She shook her head, her eyes wide. No, Mommy, Uncle must have been playing with him. That was the turning point. An imaginary friend is one thing. An imaginary friend who moves physical objects is something else entirely. I confronted my parents that night, my voice shaking with fear and anger. Her bear was at the basement door, I said. Explain that. My mother sighed. She probably dropped it, Sarah, or maybe you moved it and forgot. You've been so forgetful lately. I'm not forgetful, Mom. I'm terrified. The words exploded out of me. There is something wrong here. Why won't you listen? My father stood up, his face flushed. That's enough, he shouted, and I flinched. He rarely raised his voice. You are upsetting your mother, your daughter, and this entire house with your nonsense. I forbid you from speaking about this again. There is no uncle. There is nothing in the basement. This conversation is over. Forbid. The word struck me like a slap. I was 32 years old, and my father forbade me from speaking. The isolation was absolute. They weren't dismissing my fears, they were actively suppressing them. That night, lying awake with Lily breathing beside me, a cold resolve settled in my chest. If they wouldn't help me, I would do it myself. My father's words echoed in my mind. There is nothing in the basement. It wasn't a statement of fact anymore. It was a challenge. The next day, I told my parents I was meeting a friend for lunch. Instead, I drove to an electronics store. I walked the aisles with a thumping heart, feeling like a spy. I found what I needed in the home security section. It was a small, wireless camera. This motion-activated camera had night vision and streamed to my phone. Getting it into the basement was the hardest part. I had to wait until my parents went out for their weekly bridge game. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely get the key in the lock. The deadbolt shot back with a loud thud that sounded like a gunshot in the silent house. The air that wafted up was stale and cold, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something sour. I flicked on the single bare bulb, and the monstrous shadows sprang to life. I found the perfect spot, a high shelf in a dark corner, cluttered with old paint cans. It had a clear view of the entire basement. An old cot sat against the far wall, covered with yellowing newspapers. I positioned the camera, my hands slick with sweat. I felt a palpable sense of being watched, a prickly sensation on the back of my neck. But I thought of Lily's face, of her whispered pleas in the night, and I finished the job. I tiptoed up the stairs, locked the door, and placed the key back on its hook as my parents' car rolled into the driveway. My heart was still racing, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. I had a secret now, too. I had an eye in the darkness. The truth, whatever it was one night away. I had no idea how unprepared I was for it. That night was the longest of my life. I put Lily to bed in my room and lay beside her, pretending to sleep, my body rigid with anticipation. At 2:17 a.m., my phone, lying on the nightstand, vibrated once. Motion alert. My heart leaped into my throat. My hands trembled as I opened the camera app. The live feed loaded, showing a grainy, black-and-white view of the basement. It was empty. Dust motes danced in the ghostly infrared light. Was it a mouse? I kept watching, my eyes glued to the small screen. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. It was probably a glitch. I was about to close the app when I saw it. At the very bottom of the stairs, in the deepest shadows, something moved. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow unfolding, a shape detaching itself from the deeper darkness. It resolved into a human form, a man. He was tall and painfully thin, almost skeletal, and he moved with a strange, shuffling gait. He was wearing old, ragged clothes. He shambled into the center of the room, directly into the camera's view, and I saw his face. It was a face I knew, but a version of it ravaged by time and something awful. Gaunt, with sunken cheeks and wild, matted hair. But the eyes, I recognized the eyes. They were my father's eyes. It was my uncle, Robert, my father's younger brother. But that was impossible. Uncle Robert was dead. He'd died in a car crash almost 30 years ago. It was the great tragedy of my father's life, a grief so profound that Robert's name was never spoken in our house. A drunk driver, a fiery wreck, he was gone. Yet here he was, alive, and living in my parents' basement. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to clamp a hand over my mouth. This was the uncle. This was what Lily had been hearing through the floorboards. I kept watching, paralyzed. He shuffled over to the old cot and swept a pile of newspapers onto the floor. Then he reached under the thin, stained mattress and pulled something out. It was a small, white object. It took me a moment to realize what it was. Barnaby, Lily's stuffed bear. He sat on the cot, holding the bear. He smoothed its fur. His mouth moved as if he were talking to it. He had taken it. He had come out of the basement somehow and gone into our rooms. He had been near my daughter. The air left my lungs in a silent scream. Then the footage got even more chilling. A creak from upstairs. Robert's head snapped up. He glanced at the stairs and moved quickly. He shoved the bear under the mattress and dashed into the shadows. Then, a light turned on at the top of the stairs. The basement door opened, and my father's legs appeared, clad in his flannel pajama pants. He walked down the stairs. He didn't call out. He walked to the center of the room and placed a plate of food and a glass of water on the floor. "I know you're awake," my father said to the darkness. His voice was low, devoid of emotion. "Eat and keep quiet. You almost woke the girl again." He turned and walked back up the stairs. The lock slid home. A few moments later, the skeletal figure of my Uncle Robert crept out. He crawled on his hands and knees to the plate and began to eat like a starved animal. I finally closed the app. The silence in my bedroom was deafening. It all crashed down on me. The lies, the deception. My parents hadn't been dismissive or ignorant. They had been complicit. They were hiding a man they had told me was dead, actively covering his tracks. They chose to protect their monstrous secret over protecting their granddaughter. The word overreacting echoed in my head, but now it sounded like a threat, a command to stay blind. My breath hitched, a sob of pure rage and terror. I glanced at Lily, sleeping soundly next to me. She had no idea about the monster hiding beneath her feet. This monster was fed and shielded by her grandparents. This house wasn't a sanctuary. It was a cage, and we had been locked inside with the beast. The rest of the night was a blur of cold, calculated fury. Sleep was impossible. My fear had crystallized into something sharp and hard. I sat in the dark, and I did what I should have done weeks ago. I downloaded the video file. I saved it to a thumb drive. I emailed it to myself. I built a fortress of evidence. I waited for the familiar sounds of my parents waking up. I heard them start the coffee and begin their day as if nothing were wrong. I dressed, then gently woke Lily. "Mommy," she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "We're going to play a game, sweetie," I said, my voice eerily calm. "We're going to be very, very quiet and get in the car. It's a secret adventure." I bundled her up and carried her downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen, humming. She turned with a bright, false smile. "Good morning, you too. I am about to make pancakes." "We're not staying," I said. My voice was flat, dead. Her smile faltered. "What's wrong, Sarah?" My father walked in. "Is she still on about that nonsense?" he asked my mother, not even looking at me. I walked to the kitchen table, placed my laptop on it, and clicked play. I turned the screen toward them. The grainy footage filled the screen. For a moment, they stared, confused. Then, the figure of Uncle Robert unfolded from the shadows. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. The color drained from my father's face. He dropped his newspaper. We watched in silence. We watched the skeletal man play with my daughter's bear. We watched my father bring him food. We heard his cold, quiet command. "Keep quiet. You almost woke the girl again." When the video ended, the only sound was the hum of the fridge. My mother was sobbing. My father stood there, looking 100 years old. "How could you?" I whispered. "How could you do this to me, to her?" "Sarah, you don't understand," my father choked out. "Oh, I understand," I said, my voice rising. "I understand you've had your supposedly dead brother living like an animal under this house. I understand you let him get close to my daughter. You told me I was crazy. You told me I was overreacting while you were hiding him. Was he in her room?" My mother wailed. "No, never. He never left the basement, we made sure." "Except to steal her toys," I screamed. "Barnaby was at the door, you both lied." He's not well, Sarah, my father pleaded, his eyes desperate. After the accident, it wasn't a car crash. He hurt someone. Badly. It was a scandal. We had to make him disappear. We told everyone he was dead to protect the family name. To protect him. He's been down there ever since. Protect the family name. The words were so selfish. They stole my breath. They had sacrificed my daughter's safety and my sanity for their reputation. He is a man you thought was dangerous enough to fake his death over, I said, my voice low and calm. And you kept him in a house with a 6-year-old girl. You listened to her live in terror of the uncle, and you did nothing. You gaslit me to keep your disgusting secret safe. I picked up my phone. What are you doing? My father asked, panic in his eyes. I'm doing what you should have done 30 years ago, I said, my thumb hovering over 911. I'm protecting my child. His face crumpled. He sank into a kitchen chair, a broken old man. I took Lily by the hand, walked out the front door without looking back, and called the police. The fallout was swift and brutal. The police found Robert exactly where I said he would be. He was incoherent, malnourished, and taken to a secure psychiatric facility. My parents were arrested for unlawful imprisonment, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. The story became a local scandal, the very thing they had sacrificed everything to avoid. I never spoke to them again. There were letters, attempts at contact, but I refused. They were strangers to me now, the architects of my deepest betrayal. The trust was gone, replaced by a lie they had been telling for 30 years. It's been 2 years. Lily and I have our small apartment now. It's on the 3rd floor, no basement. We have new locks, new routines, new lives. We're both in therapy. The nightmares are less frequent, but the scars are there. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I'll see her staring at the floor and my heart stops. But she's looking at a dust bunny. The uncle is gone. But he's not. He lives in the corners of my mind, a constant reminder that monsters aren't just in stories. Sometimes they're family. Sometimes they're the people who are supposed to protect you. The greatest horror isn't the monster itself, but the smiling faces that hide it from view. My parents thought they were burying a secret, but what they buried was their humanity. They entombed their brother, and in doing so, they entombed any love I ever had for them. They say blood is thicker than water. They never tell you what to do when the blood is poisoned at the source. It makes you wonder what secrets are buried in the basements of the people you trust the most. And what would you do if you ever found the key? Every family has secrets, but some are more dangerous than others. If you have a story about a gut feeling you couldn't ignore, share it in the comments below. Sometimes, the most important voice to listen to is the one that everyone else is trying to silence. Don't forget to subscribe. You'll get more stories that reveal the darkness hiding in plain sight.